What does it mean for you to be back here?
Yeah, I was talking about that earlier today, and I think that's like one of my first really good memories in this league, honestly, was that game. And
First win.
Yeah. Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, first win. One of my first road trips, too. So I didn't play very well in that game, but I made some big shots late in the game, and I just remember the environment being incredible. I remember, like, Klay Thompson was courtside, and there was quite a few big stars in the building for that game. So really fun. Like, this is like whenever I get asked in like interviews and things, like what are some of my favorite places to play, like this is always one that comes to mind. So just super excited. It was obviously certainly hard to sit on the bench and have to watch last year, but my team played some good games here, so excited to be back and play in front of this crowd.
Hey,
Hi,
it's good
how are
to
you?
see you? Good. How are you doing? After last game, you know, you're talking about your back and getting readjusted,
Yeah.
and Steph was talking about how, look, as players get injured or whatever happens,
Yeah.
you learn different kinks of your body and
For
how
sure.
to deal with it. So I guess two-part question, just how has your back been in the
Yeah.
following week? And then what have you learned about your body and how to manage it over the last 8-9
Yeah.
months or so?
Yeah, I think first of all, I feel great. So
I saw you jump on that table. Right?
yeah, I saw that. So I think like the hardest part of injury, it's still something I'm really battling and kind of almost struggling with, is just like the mental hump of getting over everything. And like I understand my body almost too well to a point now, and it's probably something I wasn't enough in touch with before my injuries, and now I understand it very well. And so you just become hyper cautious to certain things. And you know, I think that moment in the game where, you know, obviously my back tightened up, I think I almost got confidence from that because I came back in and I played 8 more minutes. So, and I felt great the last 8 minutes. So I think it's something I can take confidence from, but it's going to take me a little bit to like really get over this mental hurdle of like trusting my body. And I was thinking about it later too. Like, this is the first time I've played 30 minutes. Like, even playing USA basketball, like I was playing 20, 22 minutes. We have so many players. We're just rotating in and out. And I ran 4.6 miles in that game on Saturday versus Dallas. So it's a lot of stress on somebody's body, and just the pace and the physicality of it too. So that's something I'm going to continue to get used to. But I feel really good. It's just continuing to work on the mental side of the injuries for myself. Yeah.
Caitlin, you mentioned enjoying playing here. You know,
Yeah.
obviously you're friends with LeBron and Kobe, who's someone who inspired you, and you often wear Kobe's.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about when you play here with him in mind, and are you wearing any special
Well,
shoes today?
I've been wearing them in practice the last few days, but they're Scrabble inspired. So this is the last Kobe that will go to market for people before my signature shoe comes out. So definitely special, like to play here and play in a place that has had.
Picture a kid in the driveway right now, phone propped against a fence, camera rolling. They take 3 dribbles, step back past the logo, and launch. No hesitation. Just pure, unfiltered Steph Curry energy coursing through a 12-year-old who has watched that same highlight clip maybe 400 times. And honestly, you can't blame them. When a player makes the impossible look that casual, every kid with a basketball wants to feel that exact thing. But here's what nobody talks about when that kid misses the next 20 shots in a row. Caitlin Clark, the woman who practically redefined what a point guard can look like in the women's game, recently sat down for a conversation and said something that stopped a lot of people mid-scroll. Not because it was controversial, because it was honest in a way that most athletes avoid being when their own brand is built on the very thing they're critiquing. She said ball handling is becoming a lost art. Think about that for a second. One of the most celebrated shooters in basketball history, a player whose logo threes became the visual identity of an entire college run and a WNBA franchise revival, is sitting there telling the world that kids are too focused on shooting threes. And then, without skipping a beat, she pointed the finger directly at Steph Curry and let herself completely off the hook. "That's not my fault," she said, laughing. "That's Steph's fault." But joking aside, the actual message underneath that laugh is worth paying attention to. Clark explained that when you watch any professional basketball player, any of them, regardless of level or fame, their workout doesn't start with step-back threes. It starts with form shooting near the basket. It starts with the same basic repetitions those players did when they were barely tall enough to reach the rim. The foundation doesn't change just because the highlight reel does. And that gap between what fans see and what actually builds a basketball player is exactly where the problem lives. The numbers tell part of the story. When Curry entered the NBA in 2009, teams were averaging somewhere around 18 three-point attempts per game across the league. Pull up the stats from a recent season, and that number has climbed past 35, sometimes pushing 40 on any given night. The game didn't just shift, it transformed. The three-pointer stopped being a weapon and became a philosophy. Entire offenses were rebuilt around spacing the floor, pulling defenders away from the paint, and creating open looks from distances that would have been considered reckless 20 years ago. And that transformation produced genuinely beautiful basketball. Watching Curry move through a defense without the ball, reading angles, curling off screens, and releasing in a single fluid motion. That changed what people believed was physically possible. Watching Clark survey a college defense from 30 feet out and pull the trigger without blinking, that changed what an entire generation of young women believed they could become on a basketball court. So the three-point revolution isn't the villain here. The problem is what gets skipped in the rush to replicate the final product. Because what Curry built his shooting on, and what Clark built hers on, was years of boring, repetitive, unglamorous work that never made a highlight package. Stationary dribbling drills, footwork sequences that look almost embarrassingly simple when you see professional athletes running through them. Short-range touch shots from angles that never appear in a game. One-handed form shooting so close to the basket that there's no arc required, just feel. That's the invisible architecture under every spectacular moment. And it's the part that young players are increasingly willing to skip. Charles Barkley put it more bluntly than most people are comfortable doing. He called out the Curry and Klay Thompson effect directly, arguing that the league has been quietly damaged by a generation of players who studied the highlights without studying the context. Players who absorbed the aesthetic of elite shooting without building the foundation that made the shooting possible. His words were sharp enough that they made plenty of people uncomfortable. But underneath the frustration, he and Clark are essentially making the same point from different angles. Even Steve Kerr, the architect of the Golden State system that arguably started all of this, has admitted things may have tilted too far. The mid-range shot, once considered one of basketball's most sophisticated skills, has been nearly eliminated. Kerr has joked about scrapping the three-point line altogether just to force more variety back into the game. The man who built a dynasty around perimeter shooting is now acknowledging that the revolution he helped lead may have created some unintended consequences. But balance is also where the counterargument lives. Because the spacing revolution didn't just reward shooters. It opened up the entire interior of the game for players who couldn't rely on size alone. Guards who might have been dismissed a generation ago for being undersized suddenly had a lane to operate in. Players like Sabrina Ionescu proved that elite shooting and elite decision-making together could neutralize opponents with a significant physical advantage. The three-point line, used correctly, democratized the game in genuinely meaningful ways. So Clark isn't standing up to tear down what the shooting revolution built. She's not that hypocritical, and she knows her audience well enough to know they'd clock it immediately if she were. What she's actually saying is more specific than that. She's saying the foundation has to come first. She's saying that the players who survive at the highest level, the ones who actually stick around and keep producing deep into their careers, are the ones who went back to the basics when nobody was watching. Every morning, before anything creative or impressive happens, before any of the shots that end up replayed 1,000 times online, there are form shooting representatives from 5 feet away and dribbling drills that look like something from a youth camp. The spectacle that people love is real, but it's built on something that doesn't photograph well and doesn't generate engagement on its own. A kid launching deep threes in a driveway isn't doing anything wrong. The obsession with the shot itself is completely understandable. But somewhere in that same driveway, there needs to be 20 minutes of handle work. There needs to be passing repetition. There needs to be footwork that feels pointless until the moment it suddenly isn't. Because the players who made those logo threes worth watching spent years on the things nobody wanted to spend time on first. And that part of the story almost never makes it into the highlight.